We needed those officers to be on the street fighting crime. And instead, we have several officers that are riding around protecting them.
We have some breaking news coming in from the south suburbs right now. The acting police chief of Dalton has been charged with bankruptcy fraud. Louis Lacey is accused of filing misleading statements in his 2019 bankruptcy case.
Now to a developing story in Dalton. The deputy police chief facing a new lawsuit involving tens of thousands of dollars in overtime pay.
WGN's Jenna Barnes is here with the latest on that tonight.
Yeah, guys, this lawsuit alleges that just in the last year, Dalton's acting police chief paid himself more than $100,000 in OT that he was not supposed to.
Dalton hasn't faced the worst yet, but things aren't looking up under the leadership of the super mayor. Meanwhile, Tiffany seems to be thriving despite being under investigation and constant scrutiny. Her latest actions are sure to catch attention. Mayor Tiffany Henyard of Dalton attempted to fire her aide, Keith Freeman, after he began cooperating with trustees investigating the village's finances. Freeman, who's also facing legal trouble for bankruptcy fraud, has been accused of not showing up to work. This has only fueled the ongoing drama and scrutiny surrounding the Howard's administration.
Ben Bradley continues his exclusive reporting from Dalton.
Is there a motion to terminate Keith Freeman?
Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard tried to fire her top aide last week, but was met with silence from trustees who refused to vote on the termination.
This is what y'all say about the person. Y'all say he's never at work, he'll do his job. Is this what y'all say? So what we doing, guys?
The standoff is surprising given that trustees once despised Village Administrator Keith Freeman for helping Henyard run the show in Dalton and Thornton Township, but he's now cooperating with trustees investigating Henyard's spending.
I had trouble following it as well, but now Keith Freeman is cooperating, doing what he should have been done in the first place.
Cooperating with trustees.
With the trustees, absolutely. Doing his.
The trustees are pushing to fire Tiffany Henyard's top cop, Louis A. Lacey, who is entangled in bankruptcy fraud charges. They argue that Lacey is too closely aligned with the controversial mayor and want him removed. Lacey's lawyer, however, claims the feds are only targeting him to get to Henyard, which wouldn't be an issue if he weren't allegedly involved in her schemes.
That leads us back here to the steps of the Dalton Police Department. Trustees tried to fire Henyard's hand-picked acting police chief, Louis Lacey, after their investigation found he collected $200,000 in overtime that they say he wasn't entitled to. Mayor Henyard wasn't having it. She insists Lacey is still the village's top cop. Dalton police officers and commanders received an email summoning them to a mandatory meeting with Mayor Henyard and Chief Lacey. Soon after, Freeman fired off a reply that read, "Louis Lacey is no longer employed by the Village of Dalton. Mr. Lacey is not allowed in any spaces reserved for employees without an escort." We'd like to talk to you about whether you're still running things here in Dalton. Lacey arrived for the hastily called meeting, but sat in his souped-up Dodge Durango. I think we're in a standoff.
After being dismissed by the trustees, Lacey showed up to work anyway, sparking outrage among board members. The trustees were infuriated, viewing his actions as a blatant disregard for their authority. Many expressed shock and anger at his continued presence in the police department, despite his official termination.
We're about $6 million in deficit.
But this morning, despite the vote, Lacey still reported to work after Norwood says the deputy chief claims the board had no authority to place him on leave.
That is not true. So we did a vote on it, and our vote is actually valid at the moment. So we were quite surprised when he showed up at work today. We're waiting for the advice of our attorney to figure out our necessary steps legally.
This is political retaliation.
Embattled Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard responded to that vote last night during yet another chaotic meeting amid multiple investigations, including a federal one into her spending of village.
Louis was recently indicted on 9 federal charges, including bankruptcy fraud and perjury. His lawyer contends that the case is part of a broader scheme to pressure Lacey into turning against the mayor.
They start with people that they believe that they can flip. They go down the line. They show up at 6 o'clock in the morning when a person is not lawyered up, when a person is just waking up, and they're telling you, "Oh, I'm here to talk to you and be nice to you and don't worry about it, and you're not under arrest, and then we're going to leave and we're not going to arrest you today, but here are some questions that we have for you." So immediately a person puts his foot in the mouth, and from there they're the fish is caught.
Is that what they did with Lacey?
To a certain degree.
Regarding Lacey's charges, prosecutors allege he concealed assets and misrepresented his income and marital status to evade creditors. In addition, he is facing a $555,000 lawsuit settlement. If convicted, Lacey could be facing significant prison time.
And at the helm of Dalton's Police Department, Deputy Chief Louis Lacey, now facing federal charges.
It's a great day in Dalton. Justice is being served.
Lacey, an ally of Mayor Tiffany Henyard, is charged with bankruptcy fraud, making false statements, and perjury, accused of concealing his income and lying about his spouse's income to avoid paying more than $40,000 he owed in a lawsuit settlement, the case dating back to 2015. The indictment notes Lacey has filed for bankruptcy 7 times since the 1980s.
I'm just so happy because this man needs to be taken off the street. He does not need a gun or anything.
Those who've been pushing back against the Henyard administration are celebrating the charges, but Lacey's lawyer calls them a witch hunt.
They're trying to find people that will shy away and cooperate with them against the mayor.
Lacey is the second Henyard ally to face a bankruptcy fraud charge. Village Administrator Keith Freeman pleaded not guilty. He's now cooperating with the village trustees who are investigating them.
Mayor Tiffany Henyard and Louis Lacey were spotted avoiding cameras as they entered Town Hall. They held a meeting with the police, asserting their continued authority and warning that any disobedience to their orders would be deemed insubordination.
The minutes ticked by. Lacey drove around looking for a way into the station.
So somebody closed the garage on the acting chief, and now he's pulling away.
Then it was time to play hide and seek with Mayor Henyard as she circled the station looking to avoid our cameras and questions.
For more than a half an hour now, we've been playing this cat and mouse game with the acting police chief and now Mayor Henyard.
Lacey later returned, but still wasn't talking.
Are you in charge? Who's in charge?
WGN Investigates obtained video of Henyard telling police commanders this afternoon she and Lacey are still running things.
Keith Freeman do not work here, he's fired. So stop playing these silly games, Board of Trustees, and putting people's lives in jeopardy.
Do what you want, but anything after this is insubordination.
Mayor Henyard is now trying to pin the blame for more than $100,000 in questionable spending on first-class air travel, luxury hotels, meals, and more on her once trusted aide, Keith Freeman.
Dalton residents are growing increasingly frustrated with the ongoing power struggle involving Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Many have expressed their discontent at town hall meetings, calling for FBI intervention to address the situation. The FBI is already investigating Henyard for financial mismanagement and corruption, further fueling the community's rising distrust.
Henyard frequently reminds her critics she's the boss.
I'm gonna remember this, because at the end of the day, I told you, you guys don't run the day-to-day, the mayor does.
Both Freeman and Acting Police Chief Lacey are facing pressure to cooperate in the ongoing federal investigation after prosecutors charged both of them with bankruptcy fraud in separate cases. As the power play plays out, it's residents who suffer. Many voice their frustrations at the most recent village board meeting.
What about us? What about our fears? What about our tax dollars? I wish the FBI is around the corner so they can come and raid this place, because all of y'all deserve to go to jail.
Dalton residents have mixed reactions to Deputy Police Chief Louis Lacey's indictment. Some are angry, viewing it as part of a broader corruption scandal involving Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Others hope it signals the start of a much-needed cleanup in local government. Regardless of their stance, all are frustrated with the ongoing drama and are calling for new leadership in their town.
There are some good people working for the police department in Dalton. My wife and I have met a couple of them, and I hope the powers that be will allow one of the good ones to fill the space.
The community already looking ahead to where this indictment may lead.
We got to take the rest of the trash out.
In Lori Lightfoot's investigation into Dalton's finances, it was uncovered that 2 police officers earned more in overtime than their base salaries. One officer with a base salary of $87,200 received an additional $14,800 in overtime. Another officer, who had a base salary of $73,515, earned $10,270 in overtime pay. This revelation has sparked outrage over financial mismanagement within the village.
In the police department, expenditures of categories with large increases, including overtime,
Other miscellaneous expenses, I will tell you, we don't know exactly what that is, but we're working on impacting it, unpacking that. Contractual services, other professional services, and medical insurance. We wanted to highlight for you, particularly given overtime, what we saw as two outliers in officers. Officer Terry Young and Officer Roland Reed. Both of these individuals in the last 2 years have earned more in overtime than their base compensation. And you can see these numbers here. Officer Terry Young in FY 2023 earned $194,290 total in the base salary and the overtime, and then in FY 2024 that increased to $227,351, combining the base salary and the overtime.
Lori Lightfoot's report also revealed that Lysis Lacey, the acting police chief of Dalton, received over $200,000 in overtime despite not being eligible for it. This finding has heightened concerns about financial mismanagement in Dalton, as Lightfoot continues to probe the village's irregular spending and potential misuse of public funds.
Officer Reed for FY 2023 had a total earnings of $145,450, and in FY 2024 $192,732. We thought it also important for you to know that acting Chief Lacey has accumulated overtime. It's our understanding that he is not part of the collective bargaining unit and has not been for some time, which under normal circumstances would mean that he is not entitled to overtime. But as you can see here, for FY 22, FY 23, and FY 24, and we're now in fiscal year 2025, through those 4 years, he's accumulated $215,747,000.
Lewis pleaded not guilty to bankruptcy fraud charges. During his court appearance, the judge mandated that Lacey surrender all firearms as a condition of his release.
Joe and Erica, that arraignment wrapped up just moments ago where acting police chief of Dalton, Lewis Lacey, pleaded not guilty to all the charges. Now, as part of pre-trial release conditions, a judge ordered him to turn in all his firearms as well as his FOID card. Now, in court, federal prosecutors laid out a 9-count indictment against the Dalton official, claiming he devised a scheme to defraud by way of filing for bankruptcy in an effort to hide assets and income to avoid paying over $40,000 in a lawsuit settlement that goes back nearly a decade. Now, prosecutors say as part of this scheme, Lacey repeatedly lied about monthly income, where he concealed multiple bank accounts that he controlled, also lying about being separated from his wife, saying that he lived alone, preventing creditors to go after her. Now, Lacey has been charged with 5 counts of bankruptcy fraud, 2 counts of making false statements in a bankruptcy case, and 2 counts of perjury. Now, the federal indictment happens in the shadow of ongoing turmoil in the village.
The former Dalton police chief, dismissed by Mayor Tiffany Henyard, has criticized her decision to use police officers for her personal security detail. He argues that these officers are essential for patrolling the streets and addressing crime in Dalton. According to him, reallocating them from patrol duties is not only a misuse of resources, but also jeopardizes public safety in the community.
We needed those officers to be on the street fighting crime. And instead, we have several officers that are riding around protecting the mayor.
The former police chief in South Suburban Dalton is speaking out for the first time to just one station about Mayor Tiffany Henyard's controversial police security detail and how it impacted his ability to fight crime.
Last year, a Fox 32 investigation showed how that detail is taking officers off the street and costing taxpayers thousands of dollars in overtime. Dane Placco continues his investigation, exclusively talking to the former top cop who tried to put a stop to it.
The manpower was just very stressed and critical to the point of almost breaking.
Former Dalton Police Chief Robert Collins spoke to us from Florida, where he's taken a new job after being fired by Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard late last year. But Collins says he remains frustrated by what he experienced leading an undermanned, overworked police department.
Collins criticized Mayor Henyard for allocating a dedicated police detail for her personal security, arguing that it is unnecessary and that these officers should be patrolling the streets instead. He pointed out that maintaining the security team is costly, diverting funds from other critical needs in Dalton, which is already struggling financially. The former police chief's comments highlight growing frustration in the community over the mismanagement of resources under Henyard's leadership.
Mayor Henyard demanded a large personal security detail.
You know, wrong is wrong, and there's a time to hold people responsible and accountable for their actions.
Last year, a Fox 32 investigation followed Henyard's detail as Dalton police officers drove her from morning till night, often to her second taxpayer-funded job as Thornton Township Supervisor in South Holland. Through an open records request, we found the officers assigned to Henyard racking up hundreds of hours of overtime, costing taxpayers tens of thousands of dollars.
But at some point, there would be 2 officers or 3 officers, and depending on if there was some type of event, it would be more officers.
That's for a town of a little more than 20,000 people that's struggling economically and usually only has a few officers on duty per shift. Collins says Henyard's security detail was warranted when it started in 2021 after a police-involved shooting sparked protests and threats.
And at some point, the protests stopped. However, the detail continued.
He accused Tiffany Henyard of treating police officers as personal valets rather than allowing them to fulfill their official duties. He revealed that Henyard frequently redirected officers from their patrols to handle personal tasks, such as running errands and providing personal security. This misuse of police resources, he argued, compromises community safety by reducing the number of officers available to respond to emergencies and maintain public order. Additionally, the former chief criticized Henyard's actions as a blatant waste of taxpayer money, noting that the security detail alone cost the village over $100,000, despite not being included in the approved budget. He emphasized that such expenses were unnecessary and that Henyard's demand for 24-hour protection was unjustified.
It grew in size and scope. Collins says Henyard frequently uses the officers as her personal valets.
Officers would be sent out to run errands, to do pickups.
And the mayor's detail racked up thousands of dollars in travel expenses, accompanying Henyard on her many trips out of town.
Why do you need a security detail while you're out of town? Who's on the other end of that flight that's going to do harm?
Collins says he became increasingly frustrated because the mayor's detail tied his hands when it came to fighting.
She isn't even trying to conceal her actions. The information is all out in the open, and the fact that she remains mayor raises questions about her lack of concern. Thankfully, the FBI is investigating, and hopefully they'll take decisive action soon. What do you think Dalton's next mayor will be like? That's all for now. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the bell icon for more updates.